How's it going, folks? Thanks for tuning in. Hope y'all doing okay today. Before I get into it, give me a like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and here we go. So, there's rumblings going on about the raising of the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, I have heard the arguments that have been made about it right now, back and forth, and I do find one set in particular to be somewhat more convincing than another side. But before I even get into that, I'm going to tell you about my dad, who lived through, up to that point in history, the biggest minimum wage hike. I forget what federal minimum wage was before the hike when he was a young man, but they effectively doubled federal minimum wage overnight. And what it did, according to Dad, everybody got more money, and they weren't necessarily smarter with it, and they lived better lives. But then by the time the inflation had rippled through the economy from the minimum wage hike, because everything gradually got more and more expensive in order to adjust. That's one thing about markets, they adjust for the availability of money and labor and resources and everything else. So everything kind of went back up, and so a lot of people were the same off or worse off because they had gotten themselves into monthly obligations that they couldn't afford because they got into them before the inflation hit. According to him, the people that fared the best at the last minimum wage hike were those that had long-term debt, specifically mortgage holders, or if you had just got into a car payment right before the minimum wage went up. There are numerous cities and states that have tried the minimum wage hike, and a lot of the data's in on that. I have no problem with someone making a living wage, but a living wage is not a static number. A living wage for me would be thriving for someone else, and that's factoring in kids, cost of housing for my family, cost of transportation for my family, however you want to, look at that. And so I could take my wage and move to some of the lowest income areas in the country, and I'd be living better than I am now. I could take my wage and move to some place like, say, DC, Atlanta, Miami, Tampa, big cities where there's a high cost of living, and I literally could not afford my family. So a federally mandated minimum wage is a ham-fisted way at dealing with a problem, if you want to call it that. I might try to post a link to this in the description. Tom Sowell, an economist, I forget what school he teaches at currently, or taught at most recently. He had talked about when he was a kid in the 40s and 50s working for Western Union delivering telegrams. And the wages were staggeringly low, but also a dollar was worth way more back then. And he talked about when the first federal minimum wage laws got passed, how it priced entry-level workers out of the most basic markets. And people, the easiest jobs where you can get good work experience, good tenure, possibly be put on being able to climb the ladder at any given business, it moved that rung out of reach for a lot of people. it also made people look more closely at job candidates. And so you could have someone that was just starting out trying to get a job, and that they were qualified to get but not qualified to earn that level of money due to minimum wage laws. I have worked my share of minimum wage jobs over the years. I worked at a radio station as the station mascot when we go out and do live broadcasts or parades or things of that nature. And I can tell you this much, the work I was doing was not worth $15 an hour. I was 14 or 15 years old at the time, and the $6-7 an hour I was making back in the early 2000s was hitting the gold mine for me. And I've worked a couple food service jobs that paid minimum wage. I worked retail that paid minimum wage, but there was a pay scale where every 90, 180 days you did get a raise. The one thing that I don't think people take into account is, and I've seen this happen, people take a minimum wage job and they expect that that's the job that they'll be able to stay at in that position and move up in pay at that position over time to the point that they can support average middle-aged adult lifestyle. And I don't think that's the case. You know, there's dignity in all work, but not all work is worth the same amount. If I were to become a computer coder tomorrow and be really good at my job, I'm worth more doing that than I am assembling vehicles at a factory. If I were Elon Musk, I'm worth more than his assembly line workers. You know, it's a fact. I think that a lot of people forget that a lot of people that had jobs that they retired from didn't start there. And there are some jobs where you can get in when you're 18, 19 years old and work your way up, or, you know, start in at 18 or 19 and then retire from them. But most of those jobs aren't made for entry-level people. And I have no problem with that. The thing is, if you get a job doing anything, and I don't care what it is, but a minimum wage entry-level job, you're going to learn how to run a cash register, how to deal with customers, how to deal with coworkers, and how to show up to work on time. That's essentially what you're going to learn. And you're going to get paid to learn how to do that. And then once you have acquired those skills and turned that job into something that would be a positive reference, and turn those co-workers into something that would be a positive reference, it's time to move onward and upward. And then you apply to a next job where you might learn more skills in a given area. Give you a case in point example. I had worked a number of retail jobs that were lower end, and I got good at talking to people and working in that space. Well, then I went to work at a car dealership. I found out I'm no good in sales, but I was a pretty darn good service writer. I could handle the irritated, aggravated customers 99 times out of 100, if not more. I could deal with the warranty side of things, dealing with extended warranties, the factory warranty. I could deal with the technicians. I could deal with the other service writers, the management, the warranty clerks, and on and on and on and on and on. I could handle people. So but I wouldn't have been able to have handled all that if I hadn't cut my teeth in other jobs where I wasn't getting paid as much, but where I was developing those sorts of skills. In the places where $15 an hour minimum wage has been tried, a lot of people end up either getting fired or getting their hours cut. And it makes the bar for entry into a minimum wage job out of reach for people that are just trying to get their foot in the door and start working in or immediately after high school. I'm a fan of a living wage for everybody, but I also think that people should be on the lookout for opportunity or knowing when they've reached the peak where they are. One of my food service jobs, I've learned what I can learn here. It's time to learn something else. And I ended up putting in an application and I moved to another job. I moved from that job twice, actually. That's an interesting backstory there, but I moved on to something that paid a little better. The schedule was a little better. I kind of got what I was looking for. And when I've moved on from jobs, I've either had enough of what was going on there that I didn't like or whatever, but I didn't peak there and I didn't reach my full potential there, but I learned a lot. So, I'm done.